Alrighty, how's it going, Mets and overall baseball fans? Thank you guys so much for chiming in for the latest Met Free Agent Frenzy stream here on the channel as we are getting so close to 20,000 subscribers, in which once we hit that goal, we are, of course, doing a massive giveaway on the channel, giving away either a Justin Verlander or a Kodai Senga jersey, whatever the one winner prefers to get. Hopefully, Senga's number will be picked by time the jersey can come out. Again, maybe not. If so, we might have to settle with Verlander. No less, I know we're just a couple hundred subs away, so continue smashing those buttons. And thank you guys all so much in advance for your endless support, guys. Really does mean the world to me. Dave, how you doing, my man? Wooly, my great members, my normal viewers. Appreciate everyone here in the live chat, guys. We have a lot to break down tonight. A lot has happened in recent days in Mets land and connected to Mets land, even though it isn't necessarily Mets land at the same time. Like Carlos Correa, I got a lot to say on what transpired last night, which was a whirlwind. My raw reactions on that further. Chris Bassitt leaving, going to the Toronto Blue Jays. I haven't had the chance to share my thoughts and reactions to. And, of course, all the latest news and rumors for the Metropolitan. So all I ask for everyone watching live or on replay, make sure to smash that like and subscribe on. Help us get to a couple hundred likes for the first short-term goal. Help us get to 20K subs. And, of course, I have to let you all know that today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting needs. So make sure you head over to betonline.ag using promo code Bleav at BLEAV. That way you get yourself a 50% off welcome bonus. BetOnline, it's where the games begin. And now, folks, let's let the show begin. Again, shout out every single one of you guys in here. Greatly appreciated. Want to give a massive shout out as well to a great subscriber here. You guys know him, Dave, who's been beyond generous, has sent so many things my way. He also sent me these bad boys as well that you see here. These like Mets wristbands, I guess you want to call them, like sweatbands, are absolutely sick. I'm going to wear these a lot going to games during the season and during the summer especially. They're going to come in clutch. So, Dave, thank you so much for that, my man. I always appreciate it. I'll make sure to check out my P.O. Box tomorrow as well. Thank you so much for all the support and all the other things that you've sent me in the past recently, and really since you've been a supporter. I greatly appreciate that. But again, happy to have you guys all in here. I'm excited to get into tonight's conversation, folks, because we're not only talking about the latest rumors with the Mets, but we're going to go on a little bit of a hypothetical tangent with some players as well. Similar to how we did a video on Carlos Correa. Let's start there, shall we? Correa, we did a video on 2 days ago, and obviously we saw a lot of people share their thoughts on Correa. It was funny, because we're all the people that thought that, oh, there's no chance in hell that the Mets would even consider the idea of pursuing Carlos Correa because he's a cheater. Oh, he's going to be too expensive. Why would the Mets even think about him? Of course, they're not going to land him and put him out third base. The funny thing was, folks, is that even though it started out as a hypothetical discussion solely because of the fact that Steve Cohen, and you can never truly rule anything out with Steve Cohen, then you see late last night, as we discussed in our video that came out earlier today, make sure to check it out if you want more on the latest news and rumors with Michael Conforto, JD Martinez, my raw reactions there. But in a longer form here, we see that Ken Rosenthal reports that the Mets are in on Carlos Correa. You see Michael Marino tweet out that Francisco Lindor is already talking to Cohen and trying to advocate to bring his fellow Puerto Rican to Queens to play at third base, in which he famously said he would play at third base if he plays with Lindor again, like he famously did during the time in the World Baseball Classic. And wouldn't it be surprising if that does in fact transpire again for this upcoming World Baseball Classic in the beginning of the 2023 season, before the MLB season begins, rather. So we see all these rumblings going around, and then not long after that, Carlos Correa goes ahead and he signs with the San Francisco Giants on a 13-year, $350 million contract. Yes, the Mets were used for leverage. And no, I'm not bothered by this, because the Mets 1,000% had interest here in Carlos Correa. It really came down to the fact that the Mets didn't want to go to a long-term deal. I bet the Mets didn't even want to go 5 years on him. I heard rumblings that the Mets definitely gave an offer, highest AAV around $33 million per year, but on a shorter-term deal. Imagine the Mets not wanting to go past 5 years, right? And probably having some opt-outs in there. Imagine going 13 years. So I am, by all means, not bothered by the Mets not landing Correa. I knew it was a pipe dream from the beginning, and I knew that the only true reality of it transpiring was that if he was going to sign on a shorter-term deal, and of course then play his secondary position of third base. So again, Correa, wish him all the best in San Francisco. That's going to be quite the battle with him and the Dodgers year in and year out, because we know how much Dodgers fans especially hate Correa during his time with the Astros. It's going to be crazy. But yeah, that's all I got. Let's see Heyman tweet. I'll check Heyman. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm not seeing anything new, though. I did see some stuff regarding Noah Syndergaard that we'll get into on others, but give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to just check some live reports because you're telling me to. Yeah, nothing has come out new with Heyman, so that's a lie. We're going after Devers. Yeah, no, that's absolute cap right now. There's been nothing official to report that. Now, if the Mets do end up going after Rafael Devers, then surely we will discuss that when it happens. But as of now, that's not a discussion that I really think needs to be harped on too much. Mainly the Mets' focus when it comes to offense is going to be more so in the free agent front than it will be trade route, because naturally that's the best thing that Steve Cohen is able to control. It's things through the free agent market more so than the trade route, because the Mets don't want to give up top prospects, especially a guy in a rental endeavors, which of course they'd extend him if they acquired him. I think he would be an amazing get for third base for a long term. You could sign him to a freaking 10-year deal and he'll still be, at a good age. Devers is very young in his career. He's in his mid-20s right now. So I would love that. But again, I'm not going to get my hopes up on the Devers front. We'll discuss that further for another time. Let's see, Charles, thank you for the dono. I really appreciate that. Everyone's talking about JD Martinez and him being a potential fit versus DH versus lefties. I'm thinking that Brandon Drury would be a great fit here. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Brandon Drury would be awesome to bring back. I like Brandon Drury. He's younger, has more defensive versatility. You can put him at first base or put him in the corner outfield, even put him at third if you really need him to, even though he's not great. However, I don't foresee a reunion between those two, mainly because of the fact that the Mets are likely looking for shorter term deals for a guy that is a DH type, that is best at DH, versus, say, being a backup infielder or outfielder. And that's why JD Martinez is most appealing to the Mets. It's not because of his lack of versatility. That's something they definitely don't love. But for him being basically a 1,000 OPS this past season against Southpaws, and a guy that, again, you're only hopefully going to land on a 1 or at most 2-year deal with maybe an opt-out after the first year, that is the stronger likelihood. The Mets want to stay on par with short-term deals for guys that they know will help them now, but guys they want to have long-term commitments to because they're either past their prime or, could be injury riddled. JD Martinez, we're going to get into more here in a minute, but I got plenty more to say on him. Again, Brandon Drury would be nice. I don't see it happening. However, if he does happen, then awesome. That's great, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I think that his market is more robust than what the Mets have interest in doing for a guy that would be a primary DH in this current lineup. But that's just my opinion. We'll see if that holds true or if that changes. But to my over 500 viewers, again, shout out all you guys chiming in. Greatly appreciate it. Continue smashing on like and subscribe on. So, in a nutshell, Carlos Correa sweepstakes for a whirlwind yesterday. It felt like Correa was a Met for a solid hour, and then that dissipated quick. But a guy who was a Met, who is now not a Met, that being Chris Bassitt, just a couple days ago signed a multi-year deal with the Toronto Blue Jays. I want to say it was 3 years, $62 million, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's making around 22 mil per year AAV wise. Again, if I have the math wrong, that's perfectly fine. Wouldn't be the first time, but no less. Chris Bassitt, very happy for him. He goes to a team that I personally am a fan of. I love watching the Blue Jays. They deserve to have success. Hopefully that'll start next season by them actually getting the playoffs and doing something and not choking against the Seattle Mariners when they had a lead in that series, especially in the game that they ended up blowing against them was ridiculous. But the Blue Jays need pitching. They need more help. We're aware of that. They obviously would have loved Brandon Nimmo offensively. Mets brought him back. They would have loved many guys that the Mets have landed, but they do land a former Met now in Chris Bassitt. C. Bassitt, I wish him all the best. 21 mil AAV, whatever it is. I know I was in the ballpark. All I can say is that Chris Bassitt, I think he's going to look awesome in that rotation with Alek Manoah. Of course, Jose Barrios, if he can try to have a bounce-back season. Same thing with Kevin Gausman, who I think has already hit the peak in his career during his time in San Francisco. A little bit of sticky substance merchant. He's not a bad pitcher by any stretch, but definitely a guy that you can barrel hard on at the right time throughout the game. I do like the rotation for sure, and I think Bassitt will be a nice, crafty mix, and hopefully for his sake, we'll be able to have some playoff experience. Just not too much playoff experience, because we want one team to win it all over the next couple of years, and that starts with the Metropolitans. So Bassitt is out. Mets rotation is already set, so no one should be really all that surprised that they didn't bring him back, and you have to realize the Mets let Chris Bassitt go while bringing in a Kodai Senga at 15 mil per year AAV wise in a scenario where he could opt out after the third year. So for basing things on those two contracts, which guy would you rather prefer? A Kodai Senga who has plus stuff, starting his MLB career, has yet to hit his peak, or Chris Bassitt who you know what you're getting? And again, rightful arguments both ways. Love Bassitt, loved him when he was here. Was the opposite of good, however, down the stretch when the Mets need him most in those final couple starts, especially in postseason and against the Braves, a guy that just couldn't handle the pressure, just like Max. Whether they were the same reasons or different has yet to be seen. But point is that would you want to take the risk on Kodai Senga? I think it's a fair risk to make. And I love the fact that Senga's deal is a total of 5 years. So if he doesn't opt out, or even if he does, the Mets still may bring him back. Like, Kodai Senga has potential to be the next big thing in Queens among this rotation from a long-term aspect for a guy that's only 28, 29 years of age. So I'm very excited. I'm enamored with Kodai Senga, and I'm perfectly fine with both Bassitt leaving and him because of this, and Taijuan Walker going to the Phillies. It sucks that he's in Philly, but I mean, having Jose Quintana, who had a better season than them both last year, at only 2 years, $20+ million, $24 million, whatever it was. I mean, how can you go wrong? So I'm very happy with how this Mets rotation has now shaped up to this point. But we know that there is still some uncertainties, not only from how they're going to perform from a health status, from just an overall how they're going to look. In Kodai Senga, we have no clue truly what is he going to look like at the MLB level just yet. But there is one man in this Mets rotation that I want to highlight tonight, folks, if you're watching live or on replay, and that is Carlos Carrasco, because Cookie is subject to trade rumors. What trade rumors, you might ask? Well, yeah, it's been reported over the past week that Carlos Correa has been shopped now by the New York Mets, to the point where I've heard rumblings of upwards of between 5 and 10 teams already showing a certain level of interest in Carlos Carrasco's services. Now, whether he is dealt has yet to be seen. Why would the Mets deal Carrasco when he's on a 1-year, $13.5 to $14 million deal? Definitely a really, really nice starter as your number 5, because he's sliding in as your number 5 right now. You, of course, have JV, Max, Kodai, Quintana, and then Carrasco. It's an old rotation, but it's definitely a strong one. So why would you want to trade Cookie? Well, aside from Cookie and seeing potential decline for him as he gets older in this upcoming season, there's also some concerns with Carrasco on how healthy he can be down the stretch. He's dealt with multiple ailments in recent years, aside from the big thing that being having cancer. I'm pretty sure, wasn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure he had leukemia and overcame that during his time in Cleveland, which is amazing. Won Player of the Year, comeback Player of the Year, rather, when he returned from defeating cancer. But Carrasco is someone that hasn't been 100% since he really arrived in Queens with the Mets, himself and Francisco Lindor. And he's a guy that the Mets, at the right price, are willing to potentially part with because they have the depth in David Peterson, Tyler McGill, and potentially another starter out there that they could sign on a cheaper deal as a depth option should they wish to help battle it out for the bottom half of the rotation, or even as a lawn man in the bullpen. So the fact that the Mets have options here is exactly why they have interest in potentially dealing him. And you have to wonder, okay, if the Mets are going to trade someone like him, what are they going to get? And that's another big question mark with Carrasco, because he doesn't have a ginormous market when it comes to value. Yes, there are multiple teams that would like him. And yes, the thought process is that the Mets would truly only trade him if they got probably a little bit of an overpay, because this is such an expensive pitching market that you can argue to get Carlos Carrasco at 1 year between $13, $14 million is a potential bargain versus what the market is currently giving you in free agency. So the Mets kind of put themselves in a nice position now. They signed Carrasco when they had no rotation certainties, and now that they have an entire rotation filled, now they can potentially part with Carrasco if they want to add another guy to the bullpen via trade. Maybe they want to add a less expensive bat, someone along those lines, maybe a younger kid with more upside. There's options now for the Mets, and in my personal opinion, I think you can never have enough depth. So I wouldn't be in love with trading Cookie right away unless it's truly a trade that just makes sense for both sides. But again, this is something that we're going to be monitoring over the next couple weeks to a month plus, really up until the season begins, depending on how the Mets plan to finish things up with their bullpen and their offense. If that will be solely free agent market, and that'll be via trade market as well. And if so, then we have to focus on those rumblings. But one more thing we can keep in mind too, and I'm glad someone said this, at least mentioned McCann in the chat. Earth said this, and you also have to wonder, could trading Carlos Carrasco tied with James McCann, again, help you get rid of that McCann contract more by saying, hey, we're going to dump this McCann deal, but we're going to give you Carlos Carrasco as well? I think that would be a little silly by the Mets. I think it would almost be better if they're just willing to just eat McCann's final year of his deal if they can't trade him. But that is another thing to consider if you're really trying to trade McCann and you want Alvarez and Ito as your 1-2 punch to start the season, which I'm fully on board with right away. I trust an inexperienced Alvarez who might not be good at all defensively over James McCann right now any and every day of the week, because McCann is just the opposite of good. since he arrived in Queens. So that's another possibility that we can think about as well. So all I know is that the Mets, they're weighing their options via trade. So that's something that we're going to be closely monitoring over the next couple of weeks to a month plus, as things are now starting to die down in the free agent market with, they took care of all the bulk things, as Billy Epler said in pressers today, with David Robertson, Jose Quintana, and Brooks Raley, but they are certainly still going to be active in these markets and have more moves to be had, especially on the offensive front, in which Billy famously, with a smile on his face, said, we have more pressers to be had regarding discussions on offense, more so than pitching. So I know he was in part alluding to Brandon Nimmo, but I think it's fair to say he was also alluding to the Mets adding at least one bat, because it's been widely reported now that the Mets really, really want to add some more offense, which is great because it contradicts what original reporting was, to a degree, by Andy Martino and SNY to begin the offseason, that the Mets, they're going to focus strictly internally with the DH. And while that may still hold true, that feels like a lesser likelihood now. Steve Cohen, it's been come out and said that he personally wants some more offense. And that's great to see, because the Mets weren't just pursuing Carlos Correa because, just because, like, they were doing that far more for his offense than you could argue his defense, because he wouldn't be at his premier position. He'd be at his secondary position of third base, in which I'm sure he'd be great at. I'm sure he'd be even better at it potentially. I love his range, Correa, at third in that scenario. But it comes down to the bat, adding another 20 home run plus bat, a solid average guy, high OBP, some solid slugging. Mets would have loved that in Correa, but now that he's off the board, they, of course, are focusing on other players in the process, and that is led by guys like Michael Conforto and also JD Martinez. But before we get into more of those, because that is going to be a hot button topic for today's live show, I want to thank everyone once more that's been chiming the live stream. Continue smashing that like and subscribe button. We get to, again, 300 plus likes by the end of the show. Greatly appreciate, if not more. And of course, help us get a 20K subs for an next short-term goal on this channel. Really, really does mean a lot, everybody. Thank you so much in advance. But I hope everyone's having a phenomenal night. For me, I'm just really happy to be talking Mets and knowing how refreshing it is that it's only December 14th. And again, a couple days ago when the Mets signed Saga, they rounded out the most important parts of the holes that they had entering the offseason. And they still have months left to now figure out the offensive side of the ball. If they want to add a bat or two more there, round out the bullpen. This is a very good spot to be in, not only for the Mets and their front office, but especially for us, that being the fan base. Pat, thank you for the donation. Pat says, Worry, this is still the same team that couldn't hit lefties. That concerns me greatly. Pat, next season is going to be different than this past season, regardless on how similar or different the team is. That's just nature of the game. But two, the Mets are likely to add at least one more bat, and hopefully that bat will, in fact, progress and do well against southpaws, right? And that's where JD Martinez specifically comes into play. JD Martinez is someone I've always been a huge fan of. I have my natural concerns with him and his back injury over this past year. Him, Trey Mancini, and that being in Josh Bell, the DH targets that were heavily focused by the Mets leading up to the deadline. Of course, the Mets didn't get any of them this past season. All of them had brutal second halves of the year for different reasons, whether it was injury-riddled or inconsistencies. For JD Martinez, it was more so with the back issues he had. And if Martinez's health is better now and he's cleared medically, then I'm all on board if you want to go for a JD Martinez. Look, I don't love the idea of not having one, but two guys that are really just a DH on the bench, him and Vogelback. And I think if you land Martinez, it almost increases your likelihood of landing doing a trade with Vogelback involved, because I just feel like the Mets want more athleticism there. I think that's the best route for them, at least. It's hard to sway me as a fan from what we saw last year, especially that a platoon DH, even if JD Martinez is signed and has a great 1 or 2 years with the Mets, that it's in their best interest to land guys that strictly are a DH, because JD, he's not going to be at first. He's not going to be in the corner outfield. He's not going to be anywhere. He's your DH. That's all JD Martinez is, as he's entering his age 35, age 36 or so season. So Martinez, I see the downside. I see the concerns with him, but I also see a guy that on a 1 or 2 year deal, how can you go wrong if you're the Mets, if you're looking for specifically a lefty killer in this platoon mindset? It makes perfect sense. Martinez is expected. His projections for next season right now are 20 home runs, 70 RBIs, a 260 average. I mean, I'm cool with that. I think every Mets fan would sign up for that from the DH position for next year because that's polar opposite of what they got all last season. So, I mean, yeah, sign me the hell up. That's another quality bat in this Mets lineup to help get protection around the Pete Alonsos and the Francisco Lindors of the world. So that's definitely eye-opening to me. And again, for a guy that's literally career average, 30 home runs, 100 plus RBIs every single season, that's how good JD Martinez has been in his career. I'm in favor of giving him a short-term deal. I think the only reason why the Mets wouldn't land him is, one, they don't love the idea of just mainly a DH guy. Two, his health concerns could still be there, and the medicals don't look good if they're checking them out. Or three, the fact that he's had decline overall, and that concerns them. I think those are three things to look out for as to why the Mets wouldn't get Martinez. But there's also many valid reasons as to why they would at the same exact time. Pat, thank you for the dono. I greatly appreciate that. Ricardo, thank you for the donation as well. We're going to get to more on Michael Conforto. Then I want to share some raw thoughts, guys who I do plan on discussing in further live streams or individual videos. Jurickson Profar, AJ Pollock, Adam Duvall, etc. Andrew Benintendi slightly, but not going to harp on much. Benintendi's a great contact bat. I don't see him coming here. But we got more players to discuss along with Conforto, who the Mets are once again pursuing a potential reunion with. Wardy, how do you feel? Will Myers or David Peralta or Duvall, Pollock? Oh, wow. Actually, I didn't see this. Will Myers, no thank you. He's a guy that actually might retire from rumblings I've heard. David Peralta, no thank you. Adam Duvall is huge swing and miss. There is upside if he can stay healthy next year, but that's a big question mark. And he has such a hole in his swing that also concerns me. But again, if you're looking for strictly power lefty bat off the bench / DH that can be in the corner outfield too because he's a solid glove, I don't hate the idea of Duvall. I mean, if he can somehow, some way go back to 2021 Duvall and instead of hitting 38 home runs and 100 RBIs, give us 20 to 25 home runs and 80 RBIs like what we alluded with JD Martinez kind of, then I'm all for that. And I would almost argue more for Duvall because while he's not a high on base guy the way that Martinez is, he at least can play a position. He's actually still a guy that has defensive upside, unlike a Martinez. So that's what's appealing about Adam Duvall. But again, I am concerned about him from his health this past year. He's had injuries in recent years. I don't know if Adam Duvall is the best guy to go for, especially a guy that, again, if we're basing things on what is the Billy Epler, Steve Cohen Mets mentality, it's not only guys that can help drive the offense and getting more runs in. They like high contact guys. They like high on base guys. The Mets have notoriously noted that they do not like guys who are going to bat between 220 and 240 and a low 300 on base percentage, not named James McCann or Tomas Nido because they have no other options at catcher, and that's about to change with Alvarez. So Duvall, there's positives with his game that intrigue me, or if the Mets sign him, I would be cautiously optimistic and fairly happy about it. But there's also things as to why I can perfectly see the Mets not going down that route, and I wouldn't blame them. AJ Pollock is an interesting one, another guy who had a 945 OPS against lefties this past year. However, Pollock, similar to Duvall, has dealt with injuries for a good portion of his career. The Mets actually pursued this guy back a couple years ago when he was a free agent coming from the Arizona Diamondbacks. Of course, he did not sign with the Mets under the Wilpons. He signed with the LA Dodgers and was pretty productive for them. And then, of course, was traded a year ago or so to the Chicago White Sox, if not sooner, because I don't remember exactly when that deal happened, but it was a little bit ago now. Pollock is a guy that, again, can play the corner just like Canna. He's very Mark Canna-esque, in my opinion. There's similar profiles. There are guys that can get on base at a solid clip. But, again, he's a guy that in a normal year can give you upwards of 20 home runs, 60-plus RBIs. But you have to wonder with A.J. Pollock, how healthy can he be? Could he thrive in a role platooning in DH or corner outfield with Canna? For Canna's not going to play every day. We know that. And he thrived in playing every 2 or 3 days this past season. So there's definitely upside to AJ Pollock, but my biggest concern with him comes down to his health, most importantly, and a guy that really didn't do well against righties. He's a lefty masher at this point in his career, and you can make the argument that maybe you would still be more inclined with a JD Martinez type because he's able to hit both righties and lefties. It's not a matter on one or the other. He can hit them both comfortably. And if we actually look at JD Martinez's splits last year, I know they weren't, amazing, but he's competent against right-handers. I know that for a fact. So let me find real quick his splits. Give me 1 second, and then I'll address Trey Mancini and go further here with the comments. Again, shout out to everyone here in the live stream as we're breaking down all the latest news and rumors in this Mets Free Agent Frenzy live show that we've been doing a lot here on YouTube. I mean, we've had great success. We're so close to 20,000 subscribers. Thank you guys all so much for the support. Have been having so much fun covering this team with you guys. It's been an absolute blast. So seriously, thank you all for your endless support. I greatly appreciate it, but continue smashing those buttons. Bear with me as my computer is going to be slower than a grandmother going up the stairs trying to refresh this thing to give me JD Martinez's split. So while that's loading, let's get to talking about Trey Mancini. Trey Mancini's another guy. Would love a fellow Paisan, entering Queens and not the guy on the wall behind me because he's been long retired. However, Trey Mancini, a guy that I advocated for the trade deadline when the Mets showed interest in him, very similar in the sense of just falling off a cliff in the second half of the season. Wasn't terrible, but really wasn't that good either. He got worse as the season went on. As soon as he was acquired by the Astros, he really did not do much with them, was not effective in postseason at all. Trey Mancini is a guy that I love him for a story. I love him as a player. I would love that Buck Showalter reunion, and maybe that is something that could really spark something in him again. But for a guy that is a primary DH, while he can be put in the corner, is not going to be good in the outfield. You're really not going to put him at first base because Alonso has that on lock. Again, if you land Mancini on like a 1 or 2 year deal, I'm cool with that. I'm not opposed to it. That's definitely adding an impact back to this lineup. However, slugging like Martinez was down last year, and you have to wonder if this is a trend that'll continue, or will Trey Mancini have a bounce back year next year and hit you 25, 30 home runs? I mean, we don't know, but Trey Mancini isn't the worst idea. Definitely a guy that, again, I would be cautiously optimistic, and I would be a fan if the Mets landed for what his role would be, which would, of course, be in that DH/platoon split. So for those reasons, that's why it's not a bad idea. But let's get to talking about JD Martinez. Yeah, JD Martinez numbers against right-handers, even with his injury down the stretch, still a competent hitter. Hit 260 last year against right-handers at 323 OBP. So OBP was drastically lower. Slugging was drastically lower. But it just shows you that he rakes against lefties because, again, 319 average against southpaws last season. 402 on base, a 600 slug for right around 1,000 OPS against lefties. A 177, let's see, 177 OPS plus against lefties, 107 versus righties. So still above average against righties, actually. But point is, I like JD Martinez as long as the Mets like him for that role. I don't blame them one bit if they don't want to, if they end up not landing him for his lack of defensive ability or for the injury concerns if they hold true. So hope I answered all that, Ricardo. Thank you for the donation. I greatly appreciate that. I hope you guys have a better idea on where I stand right now with the Mets and their current bat targets. I like a good majority of them. Not a lot of guys that wow me off the paper, but again, for what the Mets need, that's all that matters. And there's a lot of appealing guys out there that fit the Mets needs. Let's see. Justin, thank you for the dono. Hold on, guys. I'm lag city right now. I want to make sure I'm not lagging too much. Yes, I did know that the right field wall is coming in 7 to 10 feet. Yep, between this and the shift, I love the idea. Yep, and that's definitely something that would help advocate for Conforto. Now, for those that don't know, if you're new to the channel, you wouldn't know this as much. I'm a Michael Conforto diehard. I've always liked Michael Conforto. He was my favorite Met during his time in Queens. I have him on my wall that you guys see out of frame right now. Love Michael Conforto. I think he's the sweetest swing in baseball. It's as simple as that. Nothing better. Is Michael the best Met? No, of course he isn't. Was Michael inconsistent with the Mets? Yes, he was. But with all that being said, the Mets getting Michael Conforto to platoon with Canna and DH, I'm not against that at all. Here's the thing with Michael Conforto. A guy that had a down 2021 because of his hamstring injury and because the Mets hitting approach was absolutely atrocious. That's why Jeff McNeil, with the same injury, was not good for the majority of the year. That's why a lot of Mets hitters just universally were dog shit, pardon my French, in 2021. They fired Chili Davis early. They went too analytically driven because Zach Scott, being an analytics guru, did not know how to properly have things from the coaching staff and was probably telling them everything to do just based on lefty-righty splits and getting too advanced with the analytics when you need a balance of them. He did not do that well during his time as interim GM for the Mets in 2021. So Conforto really struggled that year, injury aside. However, Michael Conforto, who now, of course, did not play this past season, dealing with a shoulder injury, one from a guy that turned down a $120 million extension with the Mets to bank on himself in hopes of gaining 170 plus million and free agency, if not upwards of 200 million. Betted on himself in 2021, had the worst season imaginable in hand with injuries, and then for the offseason, got hurt and had a complete season altering and ending injury before 2022 year even began. So now he's fully healthy. Conforto, big question mark is one, how's he going to look, right? How's that shoulder going to look? Is he going to be able to be as effective defensively as he was as a guy who in 2021, he might have not been great with the bat, but defense was superb. 89th percentile in arm strength, one of the better arms in right field. Of course, he would more than likely play in left, splitting time with Canna. OAA, 72 percentile, that's above average, phenomenal fielding positioning. And someone where on a normal average, Michael Conforto has 820 plus, OPS plus. He's consistently been a solid hitter in the game. And a healthy Michael Conforto is guaranteed to give you at least 20 home runs and between 70 to 90 RBIs, just like JD Martinez, who we said is projected to have those numbers for the upcoming year, with him declining a little bit aside. So there's a lot of upside with Michael Conforto. I think among the bats out there, he's probably the best bet in regards to taking a chance on a guy to bounce back. And why wouldn't Michael Conforto bounce back better in Queens than anywhere else? I feel like he would thrive being back in Citi Field. It would help him from being a year away from baseball to not having to adjust to a complete new organization. He'd hop right back in the lineup, and he would be utilized in the Canna way. They both would split time with each other. He'd get time at DH, but there are three major flaws with Michael Conforto and a potential reunion, and here is them. Number one, why would Michael Conforto want to come back to the Mets on a short-term deal when it's in the best interest of him to land somewhere from a financial aspect? Now, again, if his priorities right now are just winning and really want to go back to Queens and potentially prolong his career there, then okay, that's awesome. Happy to have you back, Scooter. But let's talk in the hypothetical that we've known for a bit. He's looking for money. He's looking to get back out there, be an effective player, and then in a year or two hit the market again and get his value back to what he had it just 2 years ago. Why would he sign with the Mets then? In a role that will not be guaranteed playing every day, even if he starts more than Canna, which isn't impossible, it's still not a role where you're playing every day. In DH, you have Daniel Vogelbach, so unless you trade Vogie, why would you have two guys that are the same? Both solid contact guys, high OBP guys, can hit you 20 bombs a year, but suck against lefties. Michael, historically throughout his career, has not been consistent against lefties. Has he been able to hit them? Absolutely. He's able to hit for opposite field. That's why I love Conforto so much in his swing. He spreads the field. He gives me those McNeil vibes. When he's on, he spreads the freaking baseball all over the place. And that's what Michael Conforto baseball is. But the big thing, again, is that he's someone where his splits against lefties throughout his career are not consistent at all. So if you brought him in as corner outfield / DH, especially the DH position, it would be like, I just don't understand it, right? If you're going to want a platoon DH, it makes far more sense to land a righty bat that rakes lefties should you keep Vogelbach. But now this is where things get interesting. If the Mets decide to trade Vogelbach because they just don't want him, like they re-signed him because it was a no-brainer on the short-term deal, but they could trade him for something bigger, something more important if they want to. If they did that, then you could argue, okay, having Conforto as your primary DH makes sense, but for him, it doesn't make sense from a market value because he's not getting as much time in the outfield. So the best fit for Michael Conforto, I don't think is with the Mets. I think it's going to Cincinnati, get those offensive numbers up. Go to Colorado, get those offensive numbers up. Just go somewhere that's more of a hitter's park that you're going to be guaranteed time every single day. Right now, that is not with the Mets. Hold on, guys. Give me 1 second. Freaking ads are running on like Baseball Savant, because of course they are. Not Baseball Savant. Whatever it is. Like Conforto, again, for the people in the back, you look at his numbers. 2020, again, I'm not going to harp on 2020 much. Phenomenal year. But again, 40 games, 54 games, whoop the effing do. 2019 with the Juice Baseballs, 33 home runs, 92 RBIs, 856 OPS, 363 OBP. 2018, 28 home runs, 82 RBIs. So Michael Conforto had a 3-year span of being a 27 plus home run hitter, averaging between 70 and 90 RBIs, getting better by the year. And then again, phenomenal in 2020. Him and Dominic Smith were the Mets' best hitters, and then had an abysmal 2022 and has not been able to rebound the way that Jeff McNeil was able to, because McNeil, of course, was able to be healthy this year. I think Michael Conforto is guaranteed to have a bounce back year wherever he goes. And I would love him back on the Mets on a short-term deal. I'm not opposed to it at all. But again, I understand the concerns. How healthy is he going to look? More than anything, why would he want to come back here if he's trying to build his market value again outside of Queens? And yeah, just things to keep in mind with evaluating Michael Conforto. I think he gets way too much flack because, again, for what the Mets need right now, Michael Conforto fits the bill, especially as a somewhat power southpaw lefty bat rather, that can hit for opposite field. And again, with the shift abandoned, I don't see how he doesn't thrive, even if he has an adjustment period getting back in the groove of a normal 162 season after missing the entire 2022 campaign. Pat, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that. Pat says, these words will make me throw up in my mouth, but sign Dansby Swanson just to piss off the Braves. That's my idea of a good offseason. Pat, that's fine. It's not going to happen, though. Dansby's going to play at shortstop. And I do believe that if Dansby Swanson does not return to Atlanta, which feels more and more likely by the second, I think he's actually going to go to the Cubs more than the Twins. I think the Cubs are going to give him a contract that's more within reason for them than what Minnesota would potentially be giving. I could be wrong, but I would keep an eye on the Cubs. I think they're definitely a team to watch the most right now regarding Dansby until proven otherwise. Let's get Martinez and Conforto, trade Vogelbach. See, if the Mets did that, I wouldn't be opposed to that either. I really wouldn't. I think that would be a very interesting idea. And then you just have Martinez be your primary DH. I don't hate that idea. I love Vogelbach, but I don't hate the idea of trading him if you're going to do something that betters the team overall for next season. But yeah, thank you for the dono. So we talked a lot about Michael Conforto. We talked a lot about these other guys, JD Martinez, etc. Pollock and Conforto to match McCann and Ruff. That isn't going to happen. Mets aren't going to get two outfielders like that. I doubt that. What about Ottavino? Ottavino is still potentially a fit for the Mets. I would just say less likely now. They're active in the free agent market, but if Ottavino wants more than 1 year, I don't think the Mets are going to give it to him. That's why they signed David Robertson to that 1 year, $10 million deal. It's better for Conforto to platoon because high average here, staying healthy will platoon while putting up numbers. Here's the argument with Texas. He could thrive with the Mets and have great offensive numbers, driving a lot of runs because this Mets offense will be very good next year. But you can counter it by saying that it's still best for him to get the biggest workload imaginable. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe is it best for him to have more of an adjustment year while coming back from an injury that had him out the past year? That's an argument too. Again, like there's things for and against the Conforto pursuit, and I understand both of them. So whatever it comes down to, I'm going to understand it. I am. Texas, thank you for the dono. Eric Mata, thank you for the $5 holla. I appreciate that. But now let's talk, guys, about another bat out there that I have seen rumblings. I haven't seen anything officially reported, but I've seen rumblings out there that Jurickson Profar and the Mets could be connected. And Jurickson Profar is a really interesting one because he had a good year last year with the Padres, 15 home runs, 60-plus RBIs, played the majority of the season in left field for the first time in his career, and he was perfectly fine in the corner outfield. Is normally a guy that will play at second base, in that infield, but he has a lot of versatility. He has a lot of defensive upside. And that's why if the Mets landed someone like him, I think he'd actually be a great fit. Not just because he helped kick the Mets' ass in the wild card round along with Trent Grisham, literally the utility guys for the Padres doing the dirty work against us, but more than anything, having a young, versatile player that can be slotted in a lot of different positions. From Padres fan, Profar has no power. Yeah, I know. Like I said, he's tops a 15 home run guy like what we saw last year. Profar and Canna, similar profiles as well, even though Profar has more defensive versatility. I like the idea of Profar. I think if the Mets want to go a versatility route, he's one of, if not the best option out there. Yes, he's inconsistent. I'm not denying that at all, but you're not going to find the bats that are still out there. Okay. you're not going to find anyone that's perfect. Everyone has their flaws, as we discussed with these previous guys. It just depends on the player, what exactly it is. Profar's versatility, however, is something that I think the Mets, especially Buck Showalter, would really appreciate and would get him very creative with how he did his lineups. You know, whether it's from a DH standpoint, a corner outfield standpoint, even an infield standpoint, if they really want to put him at second base and then have McNeil in the corner one day based on matchups. Buck loves these matchup opportunities. So that's why when you look at Jurickson Profar, he's, again, another bat that could be a fit if things do align up perfectly. Mets got to trade for Brian Reynolds. Not going to happen. They literally just re-signed Brandon Nimmo to make sure that they do not have to go down a route like that. Want to talk about inconsistency? That's Conforto. I never said Conforto was completely consistent, Kev. I said he was literally inconsistent. But I think people have to realize that for what the Mets are looking for, that's okay, is my point. A platoon DH, a corner outfield splitting time with Canna, it helps them emphasize what their consistencies are based on proper matchups. It's different than having them playing every single day. And that's what the appealing thing is about what the Mets are trying to do offensively now. It's not like, oh my God, that they have a gaping hole in their lineup right now and that it's a situation, a gaping hole meaning that, say, Brandon Nimmo's gone, right? And then the Mets try to fill it with Michael Conforto. It's just not going to work like that, right? Because then you got to shift Marte to center or Canna. It's just not going to work. You're not going to be able to replace Nimmo like that. Mets are in a good situation now where at worst they bank on their kids for the upcoming year in DH/catcher Alvarez, and then of course DH Brett Beatty, Vientos, and that very well could thrive and work out. But I think the Mets want to add more. I don't think I know that now after advocating for it for really since the offseason began. You can't bank on the kids in a win now stage with Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer at the head of your rotation. You need to add some more pop. You need to add some more depth to this lineup, and by landing one of the players that we've discussed so far, it would truly help them do that. Oh, my apologies, Kev. Yeah, again, when we have 700 live viewers, naturally, I'm going to miss what some people are saying. So my apologies on that one. Brian, thank you for the donut. I appreciate that. Strictly DH Nelson Cruz has a few days left. Yes, he does, but I would rather take a gamble on JD Martinez than I will Nelson Cruz at this point. I really would. Nelly's going into like his age 42, age 43 season. Love Nelson Cruz, but nah, I'm okay. I rather go if we're going for a declining bat that can kill against lefties. I'm taking my chances on Martinez over Nelson Cruz personally, because Martinez still has a better track record over recent years. And I think you can definitely get more than enough production out of him for what that DH position would be. And again, shout out everyone here in the live stream, guys. Greatly appreciate it. Continue smashing that like and subscribe on. I don't know where we are on the like count, but again, if we get a 300 to 400 likes by the end of the live show, all I ask is literally just half the viewers hit that like button. Greatly appreciate it if you haven't already.